So before I get into this review, I want to apologise if the audio in this video turns out bad. I'm in Spain visiting my girlfriend's family and friends, so my equipment and time is quite limited this week. On the whole, I really enjoyed this episode, and it may be one of my favourites so far. Long-term book fans got a lot of questions and mysteries answered in this episode. I think we can finally start to see the version of the Dance of the Dragons this show is going to portray. We also had the lid being blown off fan theory that up until this point I believed was complete tinfoil. There is one thing I want to address. When the show changes something or adds something that was not strictly in the books, I view it as canon to the show, with it suggesting and giving clues to the canon of the books. For example, if you personally don't like some of the creative choices the show has made in terms of the mysteries of Fire and Blood, then you are well within your right to disagree with what the show does, like I know many have done with Game of Thrones. I loved the opening at Storm's End, and it's not something I'd ever thought we'd see, and it's a great addition. Deep lore fans, such as myself, will love the conflict between the houses of Bracken and Blackwood. I've seen some people asking if the young Blackwood boy is Benjicott Blackwood. However, given he's supposed to be 13 at the end of the Dance of the Dragons, about the age of the Blackwood in this scene, and we still have yet to have the 10-year time jump to come, I'm fairly sure this lad is not the infamous Benjicott. While Damons Rival back in King's Landing plays out a bit different than in the book, being in the throne room rather than at a tourney, it is a minor detail. The scene worked really well, and it's great to see Paddy Constantine and Matt Smith's chemistry on screen yet again. I really get the vibe they are brothers. Now, I was a bit unsure of Matt Smith's wig in the preview of this episode, but the shorter hair looked fine most of the time. It was only in the one scene in the throne room it looked a bit odd to me. Like I say every week, I really like what they're doing with Alison and Rhaenyra's relationship. Even now, they are trying to repair it and remain friends. It really helps to humanise both their characters and helps us invest in them. This was always going to be a vital when it comes to Alison, as we know so little about her as a person in terms of the books. Seeing her fleshed out like this really gives book readers a fresh point of view on her. Both actresses were once again phenomenal, and it's a real shame next week will be their last episodes. They both have made the roles their own, and I do hope people are open to giving Emma Darcy and Olivia Cooke a chance to grow into the roles. Now, in terms of the plot, most of the episode's focus was on Rhaenyra and Daemon and their growing relationship. If you've read the books, then there are two very different versions of how their relationship plays out. One so scandalous, I've always wondered how they would go about adapting it for TV. However, by turning down the events slightly, aging up Rhaenyra, and taking elements of both versions of events, created a well-written and balanced take on the events leading up to Daemon's banishment and Rhaenyra being forced to marry. I love seeing this side of King's Landing as well. I never really got to see it before. I love getting to see it through a very different lens. It kind of low-key reminds me of HBO's Rome in a way. The whole brothel scene was shot. It was obvious from the start of the episode. Seducing Rhaenyra was Daemon's goal. He returned to King's Landing with his whole plan in mind. With the birth of Aegon, he's been undoubtedly pushed further down the line of succession. Involving himself with Rhaenyra in this way checks his fall and still allows him a position of power. I've seen some debate online about whether Daemon and Rhaenyra began to have sex before he ran off or not. In my view, they didn't, and it was part of his plan. Hence the frustration when he leaves. This is why I think when he was asked by Viserys if he slept with her, he doesn't deny it. He wants to create that confusion, but I can kind of see if you want to view it differently. Now, Rhaenyra running off back to the Red Keep and sleeping with Kristen Cole is one of the key choices House of the Dragon was going to have to make. The reason this took me by surprise a bit is in terms of timeline, this is an event that's happening a fair bit earlier than in the book suggests, with the two sources in the book disagreeing if Cole even slept with Rhaenyra, or even if it was Rhaenyra or Cole who made the advance. The show has made it clear what path they're going to go down with Cole as a character. With this, I think this week kind of confirms that for me, and also how some of the events may play out between both Cole and Rhaenyra later in the season. Now, I don't normally care about sex scenes. Some people enjoy them, some people hate them with a passion. For me, I just don't care. However, when it came to Game of Thrones, I never felt they were done that well, and in a lot of cases were just thrown in to spout exposition to move more difficult parts of the plot along. And frankly, some of the sex scenes in later seasons were poorly shot and frankly pointless. Now, what I like about this episode is the scene really helps get across to the viewer the night and day difference between Alison and Rhaenyra's situation. Alison did her duty to her father and her family by marrying a man she perhaps has little attraction to or true feelings, while you have Rhaenyra, who has chosen the opposite path. It was a great bit of storytelling and the whole sequence was marvellously shot. Otto was interesting in this episode. I love the fact he was just doing his job, but in doing so, servicing his own needs. And I also think it 100% confirms, by this point in time, Otto is in league with Mysaria. She is his source of information that he cannot name. It's great to see that Viserys isn't just blind to all the politics happening around him. It's nice to see Viserys has some strength of character when he sees the people around him, be that his brother or his hand, using their position to try and further themselves. By the end of the episode, we are in a position where the House of Cards is finally nearly built up and ready for it all to come tumbling down. Now, if you don't want any spoilers, I'd end the video now, as there is one last thing I want to talk about. Now, I think for most fans, it's a given that Rhaenyra's first 3 children are Harwinstrongs. However, there is a tinfoil theory I first heard from Preston Jacobs that suggests that Kristen Cole could be the father of Rhaenyra's eldest son, Jace. I personally never bought into the theory that much, because for me the timelines were very tight. However, we don't know. The end of the episode didn't show Rhaenyra taking the moon tea. We don't know if her liaisons with Kristen Cole are going to carry on for a while into the next episode. Given the mystery of Rhaenyra's last night of freedom before her marriage has sort of been answered now, it does leave room in the timeline for this to happen, depending on how next week's episode plays out. I still don't think it will happen, but I kind of love the irony if it's proven to be true. The only other thing I want to add is that if Jace does turn out to be Cole's, I don't think Cole should ever know about it. It would not make sense with his arc. All in all, this episode is great, and I love it as much as the first episode, so I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. I can't wait for next week, and I'm really looking forward to the introduction of the younger generation of characters, such as the Strong Lads and Aegon, Aemon, and so on. While I wish I could go into more detail with some of the lore in this episode and break down the timeline that we have, that will have to wait to be its own video, given my lack of time and proper equipment this week while being away on holiday. So keep an eye out for that video in the week.